The tires of my Ford F-250 crunched over the gravel road, stirring up a trail of dust as I passed a freshly installed Dusty Pines HOA private access sign. It was the same land, but something had changed. My grandfather's old ranch, once framed by weathered fences and open fields, now sat amidst a surgically landscaped neighborhood of terracotta roofs and matching mailboxes. A place that once whispered freedom now reeked of regulation. I hadn't set foot here in over a decade. Work in Washington, real estate compliance, federal housing standards, kept me too far and too busy. But after stepping back from full-time duties, I knew where I belonged. Home. I pulled into the gravel driveway of the old ranch house. Still standing, still stubborn. The siding had been updated by the management firm, but the bones of the house remained strong. It felt like stepping back into the past, but the surroundings screamed present-day suburbia. The air was dry, heavy with sun and sagebrush. I barely had time to open the tailgate when I heard it. The whirring approach of electric tires. A navy blue golf cart zipped down the road, stopping abruptly at the edge of my drive. The driver stepped out with the authority of someone who mistook paperwork for power. She wore pressed khakis, a sleeveless blouse, and a visor too clean for Texas dust. Her expression was sharp, judgmental, well-practiced. "I'm going to need you to move that vehicle," she said, not bothering with the greeting. I raised an eyebrow. "Pardon? This is private property, governed by HOA statute. No trucks over 3 tons are permitted outside of designated hours." "I own this land," I replied, stepping closer. She blinked, almost offended. "That's highly unlikely. All landowners are required to register with the HOA, and your name is not in our files. I'm Eli Graves. My family's owned this ranch for 3 generations. Never sold it." A silence stretched between us. She glanced down at her clipboard, then up again. "Well, Mr. Graves," she said coolly, "you appear to be in violation of several regulations. Unregistered vehicle, overgrown lawn, no visible house number. You'll need to attend our new resident orientation and submit improvement plans within 30 days. "I think you misunderstand," I said. "I'm not new, and I won't be submitting anything to you." Her lips tightened. "I'm Karen Durling, president of the Dusty Pines Homeowners Association. We enforce the rules here. If you refuse compliance, we'll escalate this." "To what?" She pulled out her phone. "To the sheriff." I smiled. Not wide, just enough. "Go ahead." The thing Karen Durling didn't know, the thing that would soon turn her world upside down, was that I wasn't just a homeowner. I wasn't just a returning rancher. I was a federal overseer of HOA compliance for the entire country. I knew every rule, every loophole, every overreach. And for the last 10 years, I'd watched communities like Dusty Pines become monuments to petty tyranny. But now I was on the ground. She pressed the dial. As she turned away to speak to dispatch, I walked up the porch steps of my home. My boots echoed against the wood like a slow drumbeat. The door creaked open. The air inside was still, heavy with old cedar and memory. I was back, and I was done playing nice. It didn't take long for the patrol car to arrive. A dusty white SUV with faded county markings pulled into my driveway just as the late sun dropped behind the pines. Sheriff's Deputy Rowland stepped out, hat low over his brow, eyes cautious but not unfriendly. "Evening, sir. Got a call about an unauthorized vehicle and potential trespassing." Karen remained seated in her golf cart across the road, arms crossed like a schoolteacher ready to issue detention. I nodded and handed him a folder from my glove compartment. "Here's the deed, and my federal ID." He flipped through the documents, nodding slowly. "Well, this seems in order. She's got quite a mouth on her," I added casually. "Didn't even bother to check facts before dialing the law." He sighed. "Karen Durling's been overzealous since she took over the HOA. Some folks like it. Others, not so much." She mentioned citations. "Yeah, she tends to lead with those. Technically, HOA can't enforce anything beyond civil proceedings unless safety's at stake. You'd be surprised how many don't know that." I smiled. "I wouldn't." He handed my documents back. "Far as the county's concerned, You're well within your rights. Just be aware she doesn't back off easy. I'm counting on it. The next morning, I found a formal envelope pinned to my door. Inside were 14 citations: non-standard fence material, non-compliant roof color, excessive gravel in driveway, and so on. Most were absurd. All were fabricated. I drove into town and walked straight into the HOA office. It shared space with a post office, a florist, and a yoga studio. Karen sat behind the desk, lips pursed, hands steepled like she was presiding over a courtroom. "Mr. Graves," she said, voice like ice water, "I trust you received our compliance packet." "Oh, I received it," I replied. "I've also reviewed your charter. You're operating under bylaws last filed in 2018. The state mandates updates every 2 years. That alone renders your enforcement powers questionable at best." She blinked, but her composure held. "We're in the process of updating." "And you issued citations without a compliance hearing, proper notice, or board consensus. That's 3 separate violations." "Are you threatening me, Mr. Graves?" "I'm informing you." I leaned forward. "I've overseen more HOA audits than you've issued fines. I've taken down entire associations for less." Her eyes flickered. "I suggest you tell your board to prepare for a formal complaint. Because if these citations aren't rescinded by Friday, I'll be forwarding everything to the Texas Office of Community Affairs." Karen stood, but her voice cracked slightly. "We're just trying to maintain standards." "Then maybe you should start by following them yourself." I turned and walked out. That evening, I found my mailbox had been pulled from the ground. A rock had shattered the rear window of my truck. No note, no witnesses. The next day, a neighbor named Teresa came by. Middle-aged, thoughtful eyes, hands calloused from garden work. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "You're not the first she's targeted. Why doesn't anyone stop her?" She shrugged. "People are scared. She finds them into silence. Had one couple evicted over unpaid HOA dues. Claimed they broke some water use ordinance." I nodded. "That ends now." I spent the next 2 days combing through public records, property liens, and HOA filings. The deeper I dug, the darker it got. Karen had issued fines that exceeded legal caps. Her personal landscaper held exclusive contracts for common areas. No bid, no oversight. There were irregularities in voting tallies, conflict of interest, missing financial disclosures. The woman wasn't just a busybody. She was a tyrant with a ledger, and she had no idea who she was dealing with. By Thursday evening, I had a binder thick with documentation. My next move was the HOA meeting scheduled for Saturday. I called in a few favors from old colleagues at the Department of Housing. If Karen wanted to make this personal, I was ready to return the favor. With policy, precedent, and power. Saturday morning came with a sky full of sun and the distant hum of lawn mowers. Routine massed as order. I walked into the community center 10 minutes early, binder in hand, button shirt crisp, boots polished. People were already filing into the main room. Fold-out chairs lined up in neat rows faced a podium draped in a blue HOA branded cloth. Karen stood at the front, flanked by 3 board members, each older, expressionless, and visibly uncomfortable. She saw me and narrowed her eyes. I gave her a curt nod. The room filled fast. Maybe 40 residents. Some familiar faces. Some curious. A few nodded cautiously at me. I could feel the tension, silent, brittle. Karen cleared her throat. "Let's begin." She launched into the usual. Community budget, landscaping updates, a proposal for a new security gate. But before she could finish her second point, I raised my hand. Karen hesitated. "Mr. Graves, this is not an open forum. It is when you're violating half a dozen statutes." I replied. I stepped toward the front, handing out copies of my binder to each board member. "I've compiled a list of the HOA's most recent violations: financial misconduct, unlawful enforcement, conflict of interest. There are signatures from over a dozen residents requesting an internal audit." A ripple passed through the room. Karen's face flushed. "This is highly inappropriate. You're disrupting official business." "This is official business," I countered. "And here's the kicker. I've already submitted this package to the state attorney general's office. I'm just giving you the courtesy of a head start. A board member, Mr. Hensley, spoke up. Kara, is this true? She stammered. It's a fabrication. He's not even a registered HOA member. He owns the property, Hensley said. That's enough. Voices in the crowd rose. A woman in the back called out, "You fine me $300 for planting wildflowers." Another, "Where's the reserve fund money?" Karen lost her footing. "We need to adjourn." "No," I said. "We need a vote." According to bylaws, which I had printed and highlighted, a majority vote of attending members could initiate a motion of board review. The vote passed. 27 hands raised. Karen stormed out. I didn't smile. Not yet. I just gathered my binder, shook a few hands, and said, "This isn't revenge. It's accountability." But deep down, I knew one thing. She'd be back. Karen didn't return to the community center after the vote. That night, word spread like wildfire through Dusty Pines. Her name vanished from the HOA roster by morning. A simple email resignation. No apology. No explanation. Just absence. But ghosts don't leave so easily. On Monday, I filed the official paperwork with the State Office of Housing Compliance. An interim board was assigned, and within 2 weeks, the Dusty Pines HOA was placed under formal audit. Subpoenas followed. Financial records were seized. Residents, once silenced by fear, now spoke freely. Teresa, who'd once whispered warnings on my porch, was elected chair of the new oversight committee. Mr. Hensley joined too, determined to fix the system he once quietly obeyed. They weren't experts, but they had something rarer: integrity. Karen's loyalists, few as they were, either resigned or distanced themselves. Her landscaper contract? Terminated. HOA dues? Temporarily frozen pending recalculation. Fines? Most rescinded. For a while, it seemed like peace had finally come to Dusty Pines. Until the letter arrived. It was hand-delivered. No return address. Sealed with red wax. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "This isn't over, Mr. Graves. You may know the law, but I know people. You made enemies in places your badge can't protect you. Enjoy your ranch while you still have it." No signature, but the perfume on the envelope was unmistakable. Karen, I kept the letter, turned it over federal authorities, who linked it to similar threats issued in HOA fraud cases across the country. Apparently, Karen had ties to a broader network. HOA consultants who profited from manipulating associations into financial dependency. She wasn't just a tyrant. She was a cog in a machine. The investigation broadened. I traveled back to D.C. in the fall, presented Dusty Pines as Case 0 in a Senate subcommittee on HOA abuse. My testimony aired live. Citizens from across the country reached out. Stories of harassment, forced evictions, manipulated ballots. It wasn't just Dusty Pines. It was systemic. The bill passed 6 months later. The Community Equity and Oversight Act. HOAs were now federally accountable. Boards required certification. Fines capped. Budgets transparent. Abuse criminalized. Dusty Pines changed too. They took down the old metal sign, replaced it with a wooden arch that read simply, "Welcome to Dusty Pines, a community, not a corporation." The gravel road stayed gravel. The fences stayed mismatched. And my F-250 still parked proudly outside my grandfather's old home. Karen was never arrested, but she vanished from the HOA world. Word had it she moved to Florida, somewhere with no neighborhood regulations. Irony had a sense of humor. Sometimes I still get calls. Rural counties, urban townhomes, folks needing help navigating HOA tyranny. And I help when I can. But mostly, I sit on my porch, coffee in hand, wind in the trees, and boots on the rail. Justice, I've learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it settles quietly, like dust after a long drive home.